But it turned out the Twitter space was pretty effing eventful, because in the Twitter space, and I don't know how many people caught it last night. I did stream it on the channel. Lauren, of course, also has it on her Twitter account if you guys missed it. Not only was Nick Fuentes in the Twitter space, but the Daily Wire's CEO, Jeremy Boring, joined the Twitter space for like an hour. And I was like, oh shit. And so I had a chance to ask some questions. And you guys know, like, I'm an organizational psychologist at heart, hiring and people issues and the psychology of the workplace. It's just my thing, man. I've worked with large organizations. I've worked with small organizations. I've worked with organizations helping them to figure out how to fire people that they don't want there anymore. And I don't really like to do that, but I have done it. And so I got to ask Jeremy Boring some questions about what the F happened with Candace Owens. So let's just let's listen to this first clip and see what happens. Let me just set up the sound.
An answer that I did not give.
Hang on, the sound sounds really low, so let me just turn up the sound quite a bit. I'd like to ask a little bit more about Candace Owens being fired by the Daily Wire. I just want to preface this to say, like, I was an organizational psychologist for a while. I worked with a lot of organizations that were quite frankly larger than the Daily Wire in terms of, you know, helping them with staffing issues, working through the employees to fire, things like that. Jeremy, I'm just wondering, and I guess I'm asking this as a yes or no question, did Candace Owens violate any specific policies at the Daily Wire? And I'm not asking you to tell us which policies. I'm just asking, was she fired because she violated a company policy?
I'm not going to make any comment about the Daily Wire separation from Candace Owens in this forum.
So that's no then. Just to be clear with everyone, that's no. She did not violate any company policies.
Well,
We're not. Very sneaky way of ascribing to me an answer that I did not give.
If she violated a company policy, you would have been able to say yes to the question, Jeremy. I know that much.
Okay, so Candace is.
Just to be really, really clear, again, I worked with organizations on these issues for years and years and years. And, well, the volume was about as high as I could get it, bro. The volume was as high as I could get it. Let me put that back down. So you're just going to have to survive. I worked with organizations on staffing issues for a long ass time. And one of the things I absolutely know is that if an employee is fired for violating a company policy, then the person that decided to fire them, which was in this case Jeremy Boring, and apparently there's been some confusion about whether or not Jeremy actually fired Candace Owens. While he admitted flat out that he fired Candace Owens last night, the CEO would be able to say yes or no to that question. The fact that Jeremy Boring could not answer yes to that question is because Candace Owens would have sued his ass into oblivion if he had answered yes to that question. I'm going to say that again. The reason that Jeremy Boring, he wasn't taking the high road. There's some sort of agreement between Candace and the Daily Wire. And I don't know what the parameters of that agreement are. I have no idea, but I know how this works. If Candace Owens had been fired for violating a corporate policy, then Jeremy Boring damn well could have said yes. I didn't ask which policy she violated. I just asked, did she violate a corporate policy? He wouldn't answer because he knows that if he had said yes and then couldn't back that up, Candace Owens would have sued his ass into oblivion. That was the best part of the night, you calling out Jeremy. Well, I actually thought this next call out was better. I was actually really pleased with myself for this one. Let's go to the next one. And there were some other, I felt like I had some other good moments too, but I felt like this was really the high point. Hopefully the volume is better on this one. Does that person have a job? Okay, let me just get the volume set up. Yeah,
I'm not gonna.
This is the next Jordan Peterson. This is the next. Oh shit. Hang on. So basically, that's a little bit too loud. Okay, so basically, what I asked to set this up is I said, Jeremy, I have a hypothetical question for you. And I'll get the full clip up to YouTube at some point. I said, Jeremy, I have a hypothetical question for you. If you have in front of you the greatest, like one of the greatest conservative commentators like that you've ever seen, the next Jordan Peterson, this person has a track record of 20 years of a portfolio. You know where they stand. They've been consistent. This person is going to, they've been great on economic issues. They've been great on social issues. This person is going to get millions of views. They're going to sell a whole bunch of books. They're going to do everything you want them to do. They are an excellent business decision. They have a tried and true track record. If you had that person standing in front of you and that person was making some of the same criticisms of Israel that Candace Owens was making, would that person have a job at the Daily Wire? And so I asked this question, and then Jeremy pretended he didn't understand it, and he tried to deflect, and he tried to say, well, this is about Candace Owens being fired. And I said, no, that's not what it's about. This is a hypothetical person. This is a fictional person. Does this person have a job at the Daily Wire if they hold the same views as Candace Owens on Israel? Let's listen what happened. Next, Jordan Peterson, going to sell millions of books, going to make you guys millions of dollars, getting millions of views on every video they post, but they've made the same criticisms Candace has made in the last 6 months. Does that person have a job?
Yeah, I'm not. Even this is too close to the Candace thing for me to speak to, because I feel like there are implications of this that I'm not willing to engage in. But if your question is, would I hire, would I hire Bill Whittle if Bill Whittle suddenly said that there's a genocide going on in Gaza? No, I don't think that that's a person that I would hire at the Daily Wire. That doesn't align with very core beliefs for me. I don't want to promote that idea in the world. Why would I give that guy my money? And you say make millions of dollars off of these guys as though these hosts generate money and I siphon it off the top. But that's, of course, not true. I'm an integral part in building the brands of these hosts, of promoting the brands of these hosts. I spend millions of dollars of marketing behind every one of my hosts. I lose a lot of money on my hosts for a long time. Even the ones that are very, very big often make no money at all and cost a lot of money for the first several years that I work with them. Why would I make investments in people if I largely disagree with some major part of their... in the same sense, I wouldn't hire a pro-choice person to work for me. Although, certainly there are conservatives out there who have spotless records on any number of other aspects of what I might consider the conservative platform. But why would I pay them when they go against something that I believe at a very deep level, which to me is a somewhat fundamental level? No, I would not.
I want to be very clear about this. Jeremy Boring just compared criticizing Israel to being pro-choice as a conservative. Jeremy Boring flat out said that if you have an otherwise spotless conservative record, you do not have a place at the Daily Wire if you are critical of Israel. We know why Candace Owens got fired. It's not a secret about why Candace Owens got fired. And Jeremy Boring can pretend that, he hasn't confirmed this all he wants. He can pretend that he hasn't, but he very clearly has. And if it wasn't the Israel issue, then what was the other reason? Because we know that Jeremy won't say that Candace violated any company policy. We know what Candace has been saying for the past couple of weeks. What else could it have been? Candace Owens has been a nightmare for basically her entire career. You can't say to me that all of a sudden Candace Owens started becoming a nightmare in the office and a diva and a narcissist, and really they just couldn't handle it anymore, because Candace Owens has always been a diva and a narcissist. No one would be surprised by that. So you can't say that was the reason either. To me, what I heard Jeremy Boring say last night is the hosts of the Daily Wire are muzzled on the issue of Israel. They are not allowed to be critical, which goes against things that he's said in the past. Jeremy Boring, after October 7th, flat out said that he would not fire Candace Owens unless she violated a company policy, which is why I asked that first question to begin with. Jeremy Boring flat out said that the hosts of the Daily Wire have the ability to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and they don't need to have all the same opinion on everything, except for Israel. And one moment in the Twitter space, I got to get Lauren. And by the way, like, shout out to Lauren Chen, because Lauren Chen has balls to host this Twitter space. Obviously not literally, but like, this Twitter space is going to get Lauren Chen blacklisted by PragerU, by the Daily Wire. I would be surprised, quite frankly, if it didn't have ramifications with her relationship with the Blaze. Lauren Chen is going to lose friends just over the fact that she hosted this Twitter space last night. Even though she did a wonderful job, she was totally balanced. She wasn't taking a side, but she did hold Jeremy Boring's feet to the fire when she said flat out, "Jeremy, do you consider me to be an anti-Semite?" And when Lauren Chen asked Jeremy Boring if Jeremy considered Lauren to be an anti-Semite, Jeremy Boring couldn't answer no. Does Lauren Chen hate Jewish people? Obviously not. That's like a retarded idea. So why couldn't Jeremy Boring say she's not an anti-Semite? Anyway, I was really proud of the Twitter space. I was really happy to be involved. I'm glad to hear through the grapevine that Nick said I did a good job asking questions last night on his show. I sadly did not stay up to see Nick's show because it didn't start till 3 a.m., Nick. Some of us have to sleep, Nick. But maybe I'll go back and take a look. But I thought Nick did a great job as well. And listen, guys, like, I want to say this, like, people are confused about why I'm, speaking up in favor of Nick Fuentes. The fact of the matter is I think that Nick Fuentes has been massively effed over by the conservative establishment. And I have a long history of like dragging Nick. I have been extremely critical of Nick. I have not always been on Nick's side. But after October 7th, and I said this in the space and I will say this again, I tuned into Nick's content after October 7th because I was like, oh my God, Nick is going to be like extra. This is going to be great. It's going to be so entertaining. He's going to be anti-Semitic AF. I was like ready for it. I was living for it. And then I tuned into Nick's content and I watched it from start to finish. And holy shit, Nick had some of the most nuanced commentary in the game. And I was looking around at all these conservatives who are flying off the handle and trying to get people fired from their jobs. And of course, the leftists were going crazy because they always were. And the most sane person doing commentary on the issue was Nick Fuentes, of like all people. And he was so balanced. And he didn't say that Israel didn't have a right to exist. And he wasn't calling for, for violence in Israel. He was calling for peace. That's reality. If people don't believe me, you can go back and watch his shows. It's all online. It's all public. Yeah. Jeremy Boring also said in this Twitter space that he watches Nick Fuentes and he thinks Nick Fuentes is very talented. I thought that was a big win for Nick. But I do, yeah, I mean, Nick was definitely Sophie was my first internet romance. Let's not forget, Sophie Lewis, our Abolish the Family goddess, is my internet girlfriend. Sophie will never be usurped. But yeah, Nick and I did have a sordid internet romance, and maybe that sordid internet romance is heating up again. Who knows? I do have my other internet boyfriend, Big Tech, and Big Tech and Nick are not exactly besties, I'll tell you that. So we'll see what happens there. Anyway, my point is this, like, the reason that I support Nick in so much as I do. I don't consider myself a groyper. I don't consider myself part of his movement. I'm way too old and way too female for that. But I have a soft spot in my heart for people who have been fucked over by the conservative establishment, and I absolutely believe that Nick Fuentes has been fucked over by the conservative establishment. Listen, I started a Substack earlier this year just as kind of like a fun side project to kind of keep me interested, and there's like 3 or 4 articles I have written in my head for that Substack that I just haven't written down yet. And it's about Nick Fuentes and cancel culture, but then overlapping my story and other stories about cancel culture. And one of the things I did when I started doing that is I started going back into the archives and looking at Nick's old clips and looking at things he said back then. And I was kind of like, holy shit, there is a lot that people didn't tell me about Nick Fuentes when they were trying to paint him as a monster. Ben Shapiro started dragging Nick Fuentes when Nick was 18 years old and a college student. Like, you've got Ben Shapiro, multimillionaire with a huge platform, dragging Nick Fuentes because Nick dared to ask when he was 18 years old, why is no one at the Daily Wire criticizing Israel? Why aren't we saying that's gross behavior? I said this in the space last night. I'll say it again. Why aren't we critical of people like Ben Shapiro for dragging Nick Fuentes when he was 18 years old? That's disgusting. Ben Shapiro tried to ruin Nick Fuentes' career when Nick was an 18-year-old college student for asking an inconvenient question. And you even go up to last year when I really started defending Nick publicly. Andrew Klavan was going after Nick. And I'm like, how old is Andrew Klavan? Like 70-something? 60-something? 70-something? Has a lifetime of experience, and he's dragging a 25-year-old. And by the way, at that time, that 25-year-old was doing some of the most nuanced commentary about what was going on in the Middle East of anyone on the internet. It's ridiculous. And the biggest thing that I learned in last night's Twitter space is that the Daily Wire is fucking terrified of Nick Fuentes. And if you think about it, it's extraordinary. He's 25 years old. He does his show out of his parents' house on a green screen. And he has one of the biggest powerhouses in conservative media absolutely terrified of him and terrified of his audience. And yeah, I think this is true. If you want to argue that Nick Fuentes is radicalized, it's because Ben Shapiro and the behaviors of the people at the Daily Wire radicalized him. That was the start of all of this. What would Nick be doing today if they had handled the whole situation differently? I don't know. Anyway, so that's what happened last night. I was thrilled to be involved, and I think it's an interesting conversation. And I don't know, I kind of wanted to keep talking about it a little bit.